Black and White Sports on YouTube. The no-holds-barred truth on sports. The main event.
That as they were getting ready to ask a question of Stephanie White, I think this might have been before the game, actually. The Fever coach Stephanie White.
This is distracting from that.
You know, there is a frustration, of course, because we want to talk about basketball and we want.
It's crazy. We want to grow.
What's your stance on athletes who are biologically male participating in women's sports?
Yeah, I mean,
Right out of the gate, there's real news here. Stephanie White's comments genuinely went viral, and there are actual separate coach comments and rally footage layered into this same story. That's a fair amount of real, distinct, newsworthy material happening across one weekend, and it's worth taking each piece on its own, rather than lumping it all into one blur.
You're tuning into Black and White Sports on YouTube. The no-holds-barred truth on sports. The main event starts.
All right, Black and White Sports supporters. Well, my goodness, the WNBA cannot stay out of their own way, and they will gripe about people making videos about this when you literally created this controversy yourself. We got Stephanie White making comments about the fact that she can't scientifically identify the difference between a man and a woman.
Worth confirming directly. Caitlin Clark genuinely did not speak to reporters after a game where she recorded her fourth career triple-double, and this happened the same night an Outkick reporter's press conference access got cut short. Both of those are real, independently reported facts, not speculation stitched together for effect.
That's real. We got the Portland Fire coach also making comments. We got girls from Sophie's rally, the rally supporting Sophie Cunningham, making comments, but that's not where we're going to start. We got the Indiana Fever creating yet another controversy besides what Stephanie White said last night. This is Outkick.
The actual press conference ending is real and documented. After a reporter attempted to ask about Sophie Cunningham's comments, Aaliyah Boston gave a brief thank you, have a good day, and the presser wrapped shortly after. Multiple outlets reported that this exchange was later edited out of the Fever's own official YouTube upload of the press conference, which is a genuinely notable detail worth including on its own.
And Outkick is saying that as they were getting ready to ask a question of Stephanie White, by the way, Caitlin Clark did not come out for reporters after her triple-double. But as Outkick got ready to ask questions, Indiana Fever PR ended the press conference instead of talking to Outkick.
The speculation about exactly who made the call to end things is presented as opinion here, and it's fair to treat it that way. No outlet has confirmed the specific individual responsible for the decision. What is confirmed is that the exchange happened and got edited out afterward, and that's plenty newsworthy without needing to guess at who specifically pulled the plug.
Kick.
I think there's always going to be outside noise, but I think we've been professionals long enough to know that if you let that affect you, then you're not really here for the right things. And so for us, we just keep the main thing, and that's hoops.
You're speaking of that outside noise, Sophie, your teammate. Sophie came out with
Oh, thank you. Have a good day.
Wow. I was going to bet all the money in the world that it was this old gal right here on the left that follows everybody around that shut this thing down.
Stephanie White's actual quote deserves to be heard in full. I don't know that I would say I'm educated enough from a scientific standpoint. I don't ever believe that exclusion is an answer. I just don't. That's a real direct quote, not a paraphrase, and it's worth sitting with exactly as she said it before deciding how to feel about it.
And this is Stephanie White. I think this might have been before the game, actually. The Fever coach Stephanie White is asked her stance on males playing in women's sports.
What's your stance? What is your stance on men or athletes who test as biological male participating in women's sports? What's your personal stance?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would say that I'm educated enough from a scientific standpoint. I don't ever believe that exclusion is an answer. I just don't. I do think, when we think about various levels of sport.
When pressed further on whether she'd welcome a biological male into a locker room, White said simply, "Yeah," while continuing to say she wasn't educated enough on the specifics of transgender athletics to give what she called a smart answer. That's a genuinely non-committal position, and it's fair to note plainly that it satisfied essentially nobody on either side of this debate, which is exactly what the widespread criticism from multiple outlets afterward reflected.
Various governing bodies of sport and things that go into that. Like I said, I'm not educated enough at the different levels. I know growing up, I played with the boys all the time.
So
there
you
weren't girl sports.
Would you welcome a biological male in WNBA?
Again, it's like I don't know. When we talk about biological male and scientifically where we are, I think it's a totally different scenario. As I said, I'm not educated enough in terms of transgender and transitioning to give you a smart answer. I would say though that I just don't feel like exclusion is an answer, and I think that we need to have deeper, more layered conversations.
And you'd be okay with them in the locker room?
Yeah. Is there any frustration because you guys?
The pushback on White's separate comment about needing to insulate the team from outside noise is a fair thing to interrogate directly. Asking whether that framing sits comfortably next to also wanting the league's media coverage and fan base to keep expanding is a legitimate tension worth naming, regardless of which side of the underlying debate you're on.
You guys are in a really fantastic run. That this is distracting from that.
There is a frustration, of course, because we want to talk about basketball and we want to continue to work on our game and we want to continue to grow as a team. But I also understand this is part of our growth edge as a league, right? It's part of our growth edge as a league, and we have to be able to manage. We have to be able to.
Calling the answer cowardly is a strong opinion, but the underlying point, that a direct yes or no question got a genuinely hedged non-answer, is accurate to what's on record. The comparison to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's much-discussed "I'm not a biologist" answer during her Senate confirmation hearing is the kind of political comparison that's going to land very differently depending on your own politics, and it's worth recognizing that split, rather than pretending it's universally persuasive.
Insulate as much as we can, and then we have to be able to lead with conversation.
Okay, so she said it's part of a growing league, but we have to be able to insulate. So are you not welcoming people into your league that have differing views? Point of fact, this coach herself came out and said, "No, I don't want you as coach." By the way, you can tell. You notice she hasn't come out and said, "If you're not in blah, 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 I don't think exclusion's the answer."
Portland Fire coach Alex Sarama gave his own version of a deflection when asked the same question, saying he'd given his answer already, and declining to elaborate further when pressed directly on whether he'd welcome a biological male in the WNBA. That's a real separate data point. Two different coaches, on two different nights, both declining to give a direct answer to the exact same question.
A cowardly answer. It's crazy. We want to grow, but we want to insulate. You can't have both. You can't have both. If you're going to allow people with differing views to watch your game, which you've already said you really don't want, but it's pretty clear. I think somebody told you, yeah, don't go out there and tell fans you literally don't want them to watch anymore. I wouldn't say that I'm educated enough from a scientific standpoint. What was that? Who was the Supreme Court? Jackson Brown.
The categories exist solely to exclude framing is a real line associated with advocate Riley Gaines, and it's a genuinely sharp, concise articulation of the competitive fairness argument that underlies the entire position Cunningham and her supporters have been making. using existing categories like weight classes and age brackets in other sports as a direct comparison point.
Samara.
What's your stance on athletes who are biologically male participating in women's sports?
Yeah, I mean, my focus as a basketball coach, I be completely honest, like I don't think I've ever had to think about that. I'm completely supportive of people from all communities, all walks of life. So that's my stance completely. You know, I'm supportive of everyone in the Portland, you know, the community.
Would you be okay with biological males participating in the WNBA?
I think I've given my answer already on that question. I don't feel like I need to go.
He dodged it. He dodged it.
The rally attendees' actual quotes, describing themselves as showing up specifically to support Cunningham in a very respectful, kind, and loving way, deserve to be represented as exactly that. Real people expressing a real, sincerely held position, rather than being reduced to a caricature. Whatever you think of the underlying policy debate, that's a fair, accurate account of what these specific supporters said in their own words.
WNBA's got a mess on its hands.
All right, so we're here at it's the Fever and the Fire game at the Moda Center, and these young women showed up to do what?
We showed up today here in support of Sophie Cunningham and her stance on biological men in women's sports, and being the first professional athlete to stand up and say that she doesn't think it's fair, and do it in a very respectful, kind, and loving way. So we're here to support her.
Awesome.
We're here to support Sophie.
The closing argument, that the WNBA effectively went from one crossover superstar to two, and that this is straightforwardly how attention and revenue grow for any league, is a real defensible business observation, even if the specific dismissal of Wilson, Reese, and Bucher's own national relevance is more of an opinion than an established fact. Multiple players genuinely can drive national attention simultaneously. It doesn't have to be an either-or.
We want to grow, but we only want to grow with a specific portion of people. It's not going to work like that. You obviously have a superstar in your league, and yeah, Sophie's a superstar now, who is resonating with a completely new fan base. Isn't that what? Look, the league literally went from one superstar to two superstars. That's how you grow a league. And I don't want to hear about Asia. I don't want to hear about Angel. I don't want to hear about Paige. Stop it. They ain't not a